morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think we'll get the proceedings started as we're already running a bit late. My name is Natmala Bisekar. I'm one of the co-coordinators of this program along with Associate Professor Ramani Samatunga. I'll be your MC for the day or for the evening. Before we start proceedings, in line with the traditions of Australia, I would like to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land we are gathered today. I pay my respects to their elders past and present. We've got a few speeches on the agenda today. To welcome everybody and to give some opening remarks, I would like to invite Professor Gavin Jack, who is the Co-Deputy Head of the Department of Management at Monash University. My apologies. Before we start that, we will have the national anthems to begin with. Sorry. If you can please be upstanding for the national anthems of Sri Lanka and Australia. Sri Lanka Mata, Apa Sri Lanka, Namo, 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 Namo Mata, Sundara Siri Marini, Surati Apiso. Please remain upstanding for the national anthem of Australia.
See
You may be seated. Once again, please welcome the Co-Deputy Head of the Department of Management, Professor Gavin Jack, to give the opening remarks and welcome.
So, good afternoon and a very, very warm welcome to Melbourne, to Monash Business School and to Australia. Dear distinguished guests, the Consul General of Sri Lanka, Mr. Prasanna Gamagi, Australian Productivity Commissioner, Professor Stephen King, Dr. Roshan Ajwad, Professor Michaela Rankin, members of the university and colleagues within the Monash Business School, visitors to the university, and especially the delegates to the Australia Awards Fellowship Programme who are present here this afternoon. On behalf of the Department of Management, it is my very great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to you all at this opening day of the 8th Australia Awards Fellowship between Monash University Australia and Sri Lanka. I'm very pleased to welcome you all and to represent the Department of Management at Monash today, which is home to Associate Professor Ramani Samaratunga and Dr. Lakmal Abhisikara, who are key members of the organising team of this AAF programme. I would like here to say a big thank you to both of them for all their hard work, and especially to you, Ramani, for your years-long leadership in this space. Their achievements are to be commended. As I know from my own experience with these programs, it's extremely difficult to win not just one, but to win several, and 8 over a sustained period. Many congratulations. I would also like to formally acknowledge and to thank the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, which funds this programme, and to the external engagement team of the Monash Business School for all their support and assistance. This Australia Awards Fellowship is a flagship programme within the Department of Management, and we are very, very proud of the history of success we have enjoyed in winning these grants. The first AAF programme began in 2010, and since then the programmes have trained 155 Sri Lankan government officials, and with you, this 8th cohort, that number will increase to 170 now with an academic cohort too. The AAF programmes, of course, are rich in content and include presentations and seminars by senior academics in a variety of business-related and development fields, guest lectures by distinguished academics and practitioners from industry and the public sector, and of course, importantly, peer-to-peer learning, where fellows share their expertise and build networks with one another. This is the very first programme, however, exclusively designed for university academics, and its focus is on university-industry linkages for business development through innovation and knowledge creation in Sri Lanka. Now, this is a model programme not only for Sri Lanka, but also for many other developing countries like Bangladesh, India and Nepal. But it's also one that realises the Department of Management's mission to design and to deliver programmes that build bridges between academia and industry, and in so doing, enhance our engagement with and impact upon society globally. Of course, this is also, I guess, a most pertinent goal for Sri Lankan universities, as Sri Lanka undergoes a period of economic and social transition in which its academics play a vital role in informing and generating innovation and business development for the public good. The Department of Management is one of 7 departments within the Monash Business School, and we're amongst the largest groupings of management academics in the Asia-Pacific region. We currently employ around 70 academic staff who teach somewhere around 8,000 undergraduate and 5,000 postgraduate students in a broad range of management units. We strive for excellence in all aspects of our research, teaching, service and administrative activities. And we are committed to enhancing our students' ability to engage creatively and successfully with the demands of the global environment. We teach into the major comprehensive degree programs of the Monash Business School, and we are currently responsible for postgraduate programs in management and human resource management. We have a vibrant honours and doctoral program too. And our main research strengths can be found in a number of areas of business and management studies, including leadership and HRM, work and employment relations, strategy and international business, ethics and corporate social responsibility, and finally in operations and supply chain management. Our long-standing relationships with Sri Lanka form a vital and positive feature of our educational, research and engagement platforms. The AAF programs have built strong relationships between the Department of Management, Sri Lanka Institute of Development Administration, SLIDA, and the University of Sri Jayawardena, and I hope I got my pronunciation nearly correct. And apologies if I missed the mark completely. Our academics visit Sri Lanka annually, and senior management from SLIDA are regular and welcome guests in the department. We also send textbooks and computers there and enjoy productive and impactful ongoing research collaborations. I'm sure this event will strengthen further our ties and enable our relationship to continue to flourish further into the future. And I must say it's a great privilege to be part of a department in where such positive and important work is taking place into the future. So it's my pleasure to be here today and to see you all as part of this 8th Australia Awards Fellowship. I hope that you have an enjoyable day and a productive 21 days ahead, and I look forward to meeting you all formally and informally over the coming weeks. So thank you and a very warm welcome once again.
Thank you, Gavin. I would now like to invite Professor Michaela Rankin, Deputy Dean International of the Monash Business School, to give her address on the relationship between both the Monash Business School and Sri Lanka.
Thanks, Lakmal. Distinguished guests, Mr. Gamage, Consul General of Sri Lanka, Dr. Roshan Ajwa from University of Sri Jayawardena, Professor Stephen King, Commissioner of the Productivity Commission. Welcome all ladies and gentlemen, guests, and most importantly, our delegates for the Australian Awards. I feel like I'm very much among friends because I met quite a number of you when I visited Sri Lanka earlier this year, when we took our first group of students on a study tour for 2 weeks, beginning in February this year. So a very warm welcome to you, to our university as well. And I look forward to a very long, engaging relationship with the university. As Professor Jack said, this marks the 8th year that Monash Business School and earlier the Faculty of Business and Economics have offered professional development programs to business, government and now academics in Sri Lanka. And obviously all of it has been the work that Ramani and Lakmal have put together, and I would like to congratulate them on the amazing opportunities that they provide for engagement and for development from their home country and for us as well as a university. So I think they're very important linkages. We're honoured to acknowledge the continued commitment and support provided by the Australian Government through Foreign Affairs and Trade Australia Awards Fellowship Program as well. As Gavin said, 8 years running to receive these fellowships is outstanding. And just goes to show the strength of and the quality of the work that Ramani and Lakmal are doing as part of this program. Australian Awards Fellowships provide Australian organisations, including universities, the opportunity to deepen and broaden their links with leaders and professionals in developing countries by providing opportunities for fellows, as yourselves, to undertake short-term study and professional development. Fellowships aim to strengthen partnerships and links between Australian organisations and partner organisations in developing countries, and to increase the capacity of developing countries to advance priority foreign affairs and development issues. But by no means is it just about strengthening the opportunities for Sri Lanka. We see this as also strengthening our own abilities and our own engagement in the country as well. Over the past 8 years, both Australian Awards Fellowships and public sector linkage programs have brought together our visitors from Sri Lanka with Australian government bodies at national, state and local levels, and representatives from numerous Australian business and organisations. The linkages forged between our faculty and participants over the past 8 years have presented opportunities to effect real and lasting change in Sri Lanka and the broader region. This year's program focuses on university-led linkages, and I'm very pleased to see such active members from the Sri Lankan diaspora here in the room today, who I know engage very closely with our participants in these programs and are an essential and wonderful part of the programs that are offered. In January, in fact, what was I going to say? The programs that you are taking place in today is only one of a number of engagement opportunities that the business school has taken in Sri Lanka, and certainly over the last year there has been a significant increase, I think, in the number of opportunities that we have taken to go to Sri Lanka and engage with industry and so on in Sri Lanka. So in January last year, our Centre for Development Economics and Sustainability collaborated with the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka to host an international conference on human capital, food security and economic development in South Asia. This was held in Colombo. So this conference focused on a number of major development challenges faced in South Asia, in particular gender and the empowerment of women, which I know is also something that is very close to Ramani's heart, and some work she has done as well. Food security, rural credit and climate change, entrepreneurship, education and health. In February this year saw Monash Business School hosting an international conference on the apparel industry in Colombo. One of the most essential industries in Sri Lanka, and one that is extremely important for the future of the country and for the region. This focused on productivity improvement, disruptive innovation and development of leadership potential. And the conference saw business leaders, government and academics sharing knowledge over 3 days with the aim of strengthening the apparel industry in Sri Lanka and creating opportunities for it to move up the value chain. Now, on a more personal level, our relationship with the University of Sri Jayewardenepura was strengthened this year with our inaugural study tour, as I mentioned. I was very much privileged to be able to accompany the students when we went to Sri Lanka, and I learnt so much about your country because it was my first visit as well. The 2 weeks was planned in collaboration with the Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce, many of who are here today, which is wonderful. And it provided opportunities for our students to experience and learn about the dynamics, opportunities and challenges of doing business in Sri Lanka at all levels, and understanding the importance of the role Sri Lanka plays in South Asia and in the broader region. Students at Monash learn that successful careers depend on a combination of intellectual rigour and curiosity, practical business and professional skills, and progressive thinking about global citizenship and social justice, all of which were experienced as part of the study program in Sri Lanka. It allowed our students to engage with government, large and small and micro businesses, and to develop and apply their skills in a country of increasing importance to Australia and Asia. The students who participated in the program without fail told me that this was the highlight of their whole degree studies. So, and that is by no means just because of the opportunities that we provided them, but it was really because of the engagement that was provided to them from the students from Sri Jayewardenepura, from the academics, from the close collaboration with industry that took place as well. While visiting the University of Sri Jayewardenepura during the study tour, as you know, I had the absolute pleasure of meeting many of the participants in this program. and I'm really looking forward to seeing your progress over the next 3 weeks, and as you work with Professors Samaratunge and Abisekera and other colleagues from Monash Business School. I'm sure there'll be many significant advances originating from the program. In closing, I would like to join Gavin in welcoming you once again to Monash Business School, congratulate all of those who have developed the program, and I hope you'll find it of immense value. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. It should be noted, Michaela, myself, Associate Professor Ramani Samaratunga and Dr. Paul Kalfadelis, who's also here, we all accompanied the students to the University of Sri Jagannath for that study tour. And for me, even as a Sri Lankan, it was a fairly humbling experience, the level of hospitality provided by the university and the genuine care and respect provided. So participants who are from that university, you should be proud of the institution that you represent and take as much as possible from here to make the institution even better. Thank you, Michaela. Next, we have Mr. Prasanna Gamage, the Consul General of Sri Lanka for Melbourne, to speak a few words on the relationship between Australia and Sri Lanka, and in particular the role of the diaspora residing within Melbourne and elsewhere in Australia. Please welcome Mr. Prasanna Gamage.
Thank you, Dr. Akmal. Associate Professor Ramani Samaratunga, Professors Rankin and Jack, Professor Stephen King, Commissioner, Productivity Commission of Australia, distinguished academics of Monash Business School, fellows from University of Sri Jagannath, friends. At the outset, permit me to express my sincere appreciation to Associate Professor Ramani Samaratunga of Monash Business School, and of course live wire of these programs, for inviting me to attend the inauguration ceremony of Australia Awards Fellowship Program for Sri Lanka 2018, representing the government of Sri Lanka, and also to speak on business relationship between Australia and Sri Lanka, the role of diaspora. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a short one, expected. First of all, I will briefly speak on the relationship between Australia and Sri Lanka. As you all know, Sri Lanka and Australia share a time-tested and enduring partnership. The relationship between Australia and Sri Lanka is marked by its historical ties, diversity, dialogue, and perhaps most importantly, the shared understanding and engagement between people across many fields. I will emphasize further on this most important aspect of our relationship later in my speech. Both countries share strong links through Commonwealth and have common interest in security and sustainable development in the Indian Ocean region, being very active members of IORA. Therefore, the bedrock of this relationship is not just dependent on those very popular 3 C's, cricket, Commonwealth and curry. But I do not mean to say that they are any less important. We celebrated 70 years of formal diplomatic relations between the two countries last year. This significant milestone was marked by the official visits of the President and Prime Minister of Sri Lanka to Australia. During the latter part of 2017, Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and Foreign Minister Julie Bishop undertook official visits to Sri Lanka. Our bilateral cooperation extends from trade and investment, sports, education, tourism, defense, maritime and regional security, to science and technology, to mention a few. Let me briefly speak on trade and economic relations between Australia and Sri Lanka. Trade and services between Australia and Sri Lanka has surged to a record level of Australian dollars 1.3 billion for the first time in 2017. On the back of strong growth in trade and services, up by more than 27% compared to previous financial year. Overall growth for the year was more than 15%, continuing the strong upward trend of growth of 8.6% over the past 5 years. Major exports from Australia to Sri Lanka are vegetables, dairy products, wheat and lentils, paper and paperboard products. Major Sri Lankan exports to Australia are tea, textiles and clothing, vegetable oils and fats. For Sri Lanka, Australia is its 15th export and 23rd import destination. However, my High Commissioner had some other thoughts. I remember something my High Commissioner said at an event here in Melbourne last month. He said, Sri Lanka exports brains to Australia while importing grains. I leave this for you to analyze and arrive at your own conclusions. I also wish to single out education as the most steadily growing aspect of the economic relationship, with more than 9,500 enrollments of Sri Lankan students in Australia each year and thousands more pursuing Australian affiliated studies domestically in Sri Lanka. More than half of those students studying in Sri Lanka eventually enroll in universities and other institutions in this great city. With the recent launch of direct flights between Colombo and Melbourne, we anticipate continued growth of trade and tourism in the years to come. During Prime Minister Turnbull's visit to Sri Lanka in November 2017, the two countries signed the Australia-Sri Lanka Trade and Investment Framework Arrangement. The arrangement provides a practical forum for our two governments to address trade issues. The shared aim is to open up new commercial and economic opportunities for business. The first round of talks between the two countries under this arrangement took place in Canberra on 19th April this year. The agenda comprised economic reform and cooperation, free trade and regional trade and agreement agendas, market access and investment facilitation, and sector-specific opportunities for investment in both countries. These discussions are expected to pave the way for regular review of trade and investment matters of mutual interest and further discussions among relevant stakeholders in the two countries. Before I move on to the topic of role of diaspora, let me tell you a little about Sri Lankan diaspora in Australia. The first Sri Lankan migrants in this country in the late 19th century to work on sugarcane plantations of northern Queensland. It is also reported that Sri Lankans were working in gold fields of Western Australia, New South Wales and Victoria during the same time. There were also some pearlers in the northwestern Australia, especially in Broome. Here I will read you some excerpts from an article written by Mr. Victor Melder, an eminent member of Sri Lankan community in Melbourne on Sri Lankan diaspora in Australia. I quote, "After federation in 1901, there was no more migration to Australia from Ceylon until the late 1940s. By then, with Australia in desperate need of migrants to underpin its economic expansion, the country became the principal destination for migrants from Ceylon. Starting slowly from 1940, Sri Lankan migration to Australia picked up in 1948 and continued to reach a peak in the period from 1968 to 73, when large numbers of Sri Lankans took up residence in Australia. Most of them arrived with little or no foreign exchange due to tight monetary regulations imposed by the then government of Sri Lanka. To their credit, most migrants did well for themselves, settling in their new homeland, thanks to their resilience, hard-working traits, and willingness to learn and assimilate in the Australian society. Carving a path for those who followed, those migrants soon made a name for themselves and were the most sought-after workers. They made inroads into practically every field of employment and endeavor, including the arenas of sports, academia, politics, medicine, etc. Attaining perhaps the highest public profile of all Sri Lankan migrants in Australia, Professor David Kretzer, of course of this university, an eminent medical researcher in his own right, served as Victoria's 27th state governor from 2006 to 2011, accrediting himself with distinction. New generations of migrants from Sri Lanka have many role models to emulate from amongst those who came earlier. The latter helped foster good relations between Australia and Sri Lanka while strengthening bonds that already existed between the two countries. They can take pride in the fact that Sri Lankans are now well represented in all facets of the social and economic life of Australia, unquote. According to Australian census of 2016, little over 150,000 people in Australia identified with a Sri Lankan ancestry. An estimated 105,000 of them were Sinhalese and 45,000 were Tamil. In addition to the above total, there were also estimated 20,000 people of Sri Lankan Burgher ancestry. As revealed in the census of 2016, over 75,000 Victorians identified with Sri Lankan ancestry. Now, let me briefly touch on how diaspora in Australia can play a vital role in promoting socio-economic business relations between the two countries. In this context, consider the following 4 aspects. Number 1, economic development through remittances, investment and trade. Number 2, intellectual development through transfer of knowledge and skills and capacity building. 3, social development through capacity building, volunteerism and philanthropy. And 4, political development and social change through diplomacy, awareness raising, assisting conflict resolution and political participation. It is no secret that to date, remittances and investments by diaspora are the main source of funding for diaspora-led development. Remittances have clear impact on development, particularly in alleviating the plight of the poor to meet their basic needs. The countries with large remittance and diaspora-driven investment pools such as China, India, the Philippines and Mexico are working to maximize on the impact of remittances and develop investment and open trade opportunities. In order to promote diaspora investments, particularly in times of economic strain, the World Bank has proposed global expansion of the use of diaspora bonds issued by a country or sub-sovereign entity to raise finance from the diaspora. Where mechanisms exist, diaspora can deploy their networks to access market intelligence, connect business and investment opportunities, and transfer knowledge and technology. There are 2 main ways in which diaspora impact trade. The first is through nostalgic trade. Sri Lankans do very well in this, wherein migrants demonstrate a penchant for goods from their regions of origin, in some cases develop new markets for those goods. Secondly, transnational diaspora networks can help to overcome information asymmetrics and other market imperfections. Much has been talked about how migration from developing to developed countries contributes to both the brain drain and the loss of government investments in the education of their immigrants, although there is little consensus on how to quantify the financial loss and how to offset it. Needless to say that educated and resourceful citizens would likely have been highly productive members of the society, thus their departure, regardless of ultimate profession, represents a loss to national productivity. In this context, Sri Lanka is planning to create opportunities for permanent return of or temporary application of knowledge by skilled professionals and have emigrated to developed countries. To facilitate this process, the government has resurrected the scheme of dual citizenship so that diaspora could easily connect with their brethren in Sri Lanka. Beyond technical knowledge and skills, diaspora may also contribute new understanding acquired in adapted country, cultural competencies and associated intermediate roles, and tacit knowledge that encompasses hybrid identities and national experience. In essence, the knowledge, language and cultural fluency that many diaspora possess have the potential to greatly facilitate the contextual adaptation and transfer of knowledge in transnational settings. Individuals in the diaspora employ their social systems and networks for the betterment of their countries of origin through a variety of means, including philanthropy and volunteerism. Social development can also occur through remittances and capacity building, but philanthropic and volunteer efforts of the diaspora almost exclusively focus on improving social structures such as in the areas of health and education. Philanthropic efforts by diaspora can be undertaken through diaspora-led collectives, faith-based organizations and also individually. However, it can be observed that some diaspora organizations evolved to become more formalized development organizations. Philanthropy undertaken by diaspora is contingent upon both sentimental and material capacity to give, which does not expect returns. Volunteerism by the diaspora appears to be becoming increasingly organized and focused, mainly aiming at social development and institutional building in many countries such as Sri Lanka. It is understood that diaspora can have an important role as honest brokers in international relations, particularly in the times of crisis and conflict. Sri Lankan diaspora is a classic example for this. During natural disasters and the internal conflict, our diaspora got together and lobbied governments of their adopted countries for assistance and intervention. In the area of conflict, diaspora has the potential to contribute both positively and negatively, which Sri Lanka had been experiencing for more than 30 years during the internal conflict. Funding from abroad can often thus help to finance, thus extend conflicts both within and across borders, as was the case in Sri Lanka and Eritrea. Diaspora can also moderate conflicts as negotiators between warring factions or by engaging their host governments in informed and persuasive involvement in brokering peace agreements. I must state that the Sri Lankan government continues to seek assistance of the diaspora of all communities towards rebuilding the country, both in supporting socio-economic development and contributing to the post-conflict reconciliation process of the country. With the government's commitment to advancing democracy, economic development, and promoting reconciliation, exciting new opportunities, economic opportunities are opening up for international businesses and investors, with special incentives for Sri Lankan expatriates. Many in the overseas Sri Lankan diaspora are crucial stakeholders in these processes. Now, in conclusion, let me once again thank the Monash Business School for inviting me to this event, and I wish fellows a fruitful and enjoyable stay in Sri Lanka. I think Melbourne weather will be kind with you during your stay here, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Prasanna, for those inspiring words. I think we have a large percentage of the Sri Lankan diaspora present here who have supported this program, I think, since 2010, and we continue to appreciate that support, and I know all of you do your own bits in trying to give back to the country, and may you long continue to do so. And there's always new opportunities, as outlined by Mr. Prasanna Gamage. Next, we have a representative from the University of Sri Jagadhanapura to speak on behalf of the Vice-Chancellor for the University of Sri Jagadhanapura. Dr. Roshan Ajwad, who is a senior lecturer within the University of Sri Jagadhanapura, will speak on the relationship between the University of Sri Jagadhanapura and Monash and how to create a positive change together. Please welcome Dr. Roshan Ajwad.
Thank you, Lakman, and good afternoon to all of you. So, Professor Stephen King, the keynote speaker and the Commissioner of the Productivity Commission Australia, Mr. Prasanna Gamage, Consul General of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka in Australia, Professor Garmin Jack, Department of Management, Monash University, Professor Michaela Rankin, Monash Business School, Professor Ramani Samarthunga, Department of Management, Monash University, Dr. Lakmala Besekara, Monash University, and other members of the organizing committee, academic staff members, and Professor Prem Yapa, one of our very good resource persons, and the diaspora members as well as distinguished guests. It's a great pleasure to deliver a speech on behalf of the Vice-Chancellor and my fellow colleagues of the University of Sri Jagadhanapura, Sri Lanka on the topic of University of Sri Jagadhanapura and Monash University, creating positive change together. At the inaugural ceremony of the DFAT funded Professional Skills Development Program for Sri Lanka 2018, hosted by Monash University. What do we mean by positive change? So So that's the key term in this topic. A positive change is a transformation, something for the better. We know that Monash University is one of the best and highest ranked universities in the world. It is ranked within the top 1% of the world universities, 80th in the world. According to the Times Higher Education World Rankings 2017-2018. Founded in 1958, it is the second oldest university in the state of Victoria and is a member of the Australia's Group of 8, a coalition of 8 leading elite Australian research universities, one of the best universities. Then about University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. The University of Sri Jayawardhanapura is the national university. It's a national university that has the longest history in the Sri Lankan university system. It is built on Buddhist traditions and values that can be traced to its origins, the Vidyodaya Pirivena. And later, the Vidyodaya University, nurtured by erudite scholarly monks of the caliber of most venerable Hikkaduwe Sri Sumangala Thera and Velivitiya Soratha Thera. As such, the university is bounded by its ideals of tolerance, equality and fair play, and is committed to developing holistic graduates who will always seek to strike a balance between profit, people and the planet. 3 Ps. Recently, under the able leadership of Professor Sampath Amartunga, the Vice Chancellor, brand new two faculties, the Faculty of Engineering and Faculty of Technology were also established, 2 new additions. However, in Sri Lankan context, research is not yet a very strong area that we believe that a positive change is required. At the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Professor Sampath Amartunga, the Vice Chancellor, has taken a massive effort to inculcate a research culture, nevertheless. His vision is to make the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura a research university rather than merely a teaching university. For that purpose, he has promoted the former research committee within the university to a fully fledged research council, where I am the secretary, which has taken a multitude of steps towards enhancing research activities, including providing unrestricted funds to carry out research projects, arranging overseas research grants, creating more than 16 research centers of national significance such as dengue fever, water quality, cancer, robotics, nanotechnology and so on. In a further step, an MOU was entered between the Monash Business School and the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, as was cited earlier. We would like to express our deep appreciation to Associate Professor Ramani Samarthunga from Monash University, who is also a proud alumnus of University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, for facilitating this immensely valuable effort. The Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, which is directly impacted by the MOU, was established in 1972 as the first business management faculty in Sri Lanka. Although the awarding of management degrees in business administration, public administration had continued since its inception of the university in early 1960s. Today, it is the foremost and the largest management faculty in the Sri Lanka university system and the most sought after faculty of business management education in Sri Lanka. In its more than 50 years of service so far, the faculty has been able to produce high-profile, internationally recognized graduates, researchers, academics, and business leaders in diverse fields, both locally and internationally. And Professor Samarthunga is a good example for that, I believe. The faculty currently enrolls annually about 5,200 internal undergraduate students, 600 postgraduate students, and 500 certificate and diploma students as outreach programs. Accordingly, we strongly believe that joining hands together by the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura and Monash University will lead to long-lasting positive change, the topic of today. Under this MOU, 15 academics, including myself, both from the Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce and the Faculty of Humanities and Social Science of the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, have been offered a great opportunity, a fellowship to enhance our skills and competencies in research and related areas. We are very fortunate to be here at one of the world's highest ranked universities to enhance our skills and competencies so that we can be ambassadors of that lasting positive change. We strongly believe that these capacity building exercises are really important in making positive changes. I again compliment Associate Professor Samaratunga, who is the key person, as was told again, behind this fellowship program, and Dr. Lakmal and others for their untiring massive commitment in making this program happen and continue smoothly. In addition to these capacity building initiatives, collaborative research in areas such as dengue fever, malaria and economic development can be promoted, as was highlighted by our Consul General as well, and our society will be greatly benefited in a positive way. The Asian region is becoming very prominent in several frontiers, and Monash can take up the leadership and act as a catalyst, I strongly believe. Based on all this, we strongly believe that this academic partnership will lead to a real lasting positive change among all the stakeholders. So let us join together to make this world a better place to live. Let me wish you all the very best, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Roshan. I should point out that there's not one day where I have a meeting with Associate Professor Ramani Samaratunga where she doesn't remind me how important the University of Sri Jalandharampur is to Sri Lanka, and what the graduates of the University of Sri Jalandharampur have done for Sri Lanka and elsewhere. So I'm not a graduate of that university, but my father was, so I can see that I have benefited indirectly from the university. So I appreciate the work of the university. Thank you, Roshan. Next, we have the keynote speaker for today, Professor Stephen King. Before I invite him, let me just briefly provide an introduction to who Professor Stephen King is. He's a commissioner at the Australia's Productivity Commission and an adjunct professor at Monash University. Prior to joining the Productivity Commission in July of 2016, Stephen was a member of the Western Australian Economic Regulation Authority, a member of the National Competition Council, and a professor of economics at Monash University. It should be noted, and I'm sure Associate Professor Ramani Samaratunga would do this in her vote of thanks. In 2010, when this program started, it was Stephen who provided the support and the encouragement that was necessary to get this off the ground, given it was the first time this type of program was attempted, especially in relation to Sri Lanka. So we truly appreciate the leadership and the support you provided, Stephen. He was the Dean at the time of the Faculty of Business and Economics at Monash University, and prior to joining the faculty, he was a member of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission from 2004 to 2009. Stephen has researched widely and published widely in economics, regulation, industrial organisation, and has advised numerous government agencies, both private and public, and provided expert testimony to the courts on regulation and competition economics. He has received the University Medal. He received the University Medal from the Australian National University, which is based in Canberra, for his undergraduate studies in economics. He also has a Master's in Economics from Monash University and a PhD from Harvard University. He is a Fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences in Australia and a lay member of the High Court of New Zealand. Please welcome Professor Stephen King.
Thank you, Lakmal. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start off by, along with others, thanking Ramani for really being the driving force behind this program. I'd like to thank the Monash Business School, and particularly the Department of Management, which has been, again, the force that's continued to, over the last 8 or so years, to push this program and to make it the success that you see today. I'd like to welcome the participants from USJP, and I won't embarrass myself by trying to pronounce it, and thank DFAT for funding the program. Don't have the title of mine, so still the previous title. The title I'm going to do today is Ideas for the Future, the Role of Universities in Leading Innovative Policy Debate. What I want to talk about is the interaction of the three players that in a sense are represented partially here today, but in terms of what you're going to be learning about and discussing over the next 3 weeks, which is the university, government and business. and the interaction between those three players, because it's the triumvirate of university, business and the public sector that leads to policy innovation. And before starting on that, I should give some background about this body that I keep getting said he's a commissioner with the Productivity Commission. The Productivity Commission is a very odd body. It's only in existence in about or equivalents in 3 or 4 countries. It's a government-funded but independent think tank. So it comes up with independent policy advice for government. It's got 3 main roles. Its first role is that the government will give the Productivity Commission ad hoc references. In other words, it will say, we have a problem, can you guys go and come up with some solutions for us? So for example, I'm currently involved in an inquiry into competition in financial services, which was given to us by the government. Unless you stay in bed and sleep for the next 3 weeks, you will realise that the banks are somewhat on the nose in Australia at the moment, and we're one of the bodies that have got the baseball bats out, sort of whacking people around the head. That was given to us by the government following a previous inquiry. We have a number of ongoing roles. So the government has given us the task of looking every perhaps 3 years, 5 years, in some cases every year, at certain features. For example, every year we look at government assistance in terms of tariffs and in terms of subsidies and other forms of assistance to industry, commenting on whether they are good value for money or, as we often do, not so good value for money for the taxpayers and for the citizens. We also do an annual report called the Closing the Gap report, looking at Indigenous Australians and seeing whether Indigenous Australians are closing the gap on the rest of the community. Unfortunately, whilst we've done that report for a number of years now, the gap doesn't seem to be getting any smaller, and in some cases it's getting wider. We also have this third arm, which is our own research projects. So in a number of situations we will look at the political landscape, the economic landscape, and say, somebody's going to need some information about this soon. How about we think about it now? So before the American president announced some tariffs a few weeks ago, about 6 months before that, we had actually started the analysis to see what the effects would be of those tariff increases, what would be the differential effects if, for example, China, which was going to be the obvious target, if China retaliated, what would happen if there's a more global trade war that develops, and we've been able to present those to the government well in advance of when the actual tariffs were announced. So that's our body. It's a very unusual body. I think it's a great body to be part of. But in many situations, we're a very small body. We've only got about 150 people working in the Productivity Commission, which means we have to draw on the skills of 3 sectors: academia, the business sector, and the broader public sector or government. In most policy areas in Australia and internationally, it is the universities that do and must lead policy innovation and the policy debate. And if you think about it, that's obvious. We're very lucky at the Productivity Commission. We have survived for a long time under various names. I've never quite worked out why the politicians want to fund somebody that actually criticises them most of the time, but hey, it's Australia. In most countries around the world, it's the universities that are the only institution with the independence, the credibility and the long-term horizon to be able to innovate in policy and make recommendations to government. So, university academics are in a very privileged but also very responsible position. I want to briefly discuss 4 questions today. They are, firstly, where does policy innovation fit into a university? Secondly, how do university academics get business and government to listen to them? Thirdly, how can university policy innovation have an impact? And fourthly, who in universities has a role in policy innovation. So the first one, where does policy innovation fit in a university? Universities, I think, are very, very simple organisations. They teach, they research, they have broader engagement with society and with the public. Now, in some cases, the linkage is obvious. And it's interesting to see that USJP is picking some research areas where the linkages are clear. Dengue fever, malaria, robotics. Nobody needs to be convinced about linking teaching, research and engagement in those sort of areas. It's less obvious in areas like business, economics and so on. But I actually think the links are more critical in management, business, economics. It's critical to engage in policy design because the university has the big picture. It's critical to teach policy and include it in classroom. And it's critical as an input and an output for research. Let me pick on that last one because I know USJP is moving down the research path, and as it becomes a more research-orientated university, there will be the question of, well, isn't it the researchers over here doing their stuff in business and management? But the engagement occurs over here. And after all, why would anyone in the journals that we're looking to publish in for our research, the top journals in the world in our areas, why would they be interested in little Sri Lanka and what it does? Or quite frankly, little Australia and what it does? Let me give a story about why that is completely wrong. Back in the early 2000s, mobile phones had just come out in Australia, been deregulated, and there was a problem. There was no competition. Mobile phones were dominated by one company, and it was almost impossible for anybody to switch between that company and one of the new entrants. And the main reason was that whenever you changed mobile phone companies, you had to give up your mobile phone number because the companies owned the phone number. That wasn't anything new. In fact, if you go back to the original creation of the telephone system in the United States, the telephone companies had always owned the telephone numbers. They got given a block of numbers. And because they were geographically monopolies, the fixed line telephones, no one ever worried about, well, what if I want to change telephone companies and take my number with me? Now the ACCC, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, which was the relevant regulator, started chatting to some academics. And that problem, the fact that it was the ownership of a mobile phone number and your inability as a consumer to move that number when you moved companies, suddenly appeared as the obvious problem when the academics and the government and the telephone companies got together to discuss this. Now, I was one of the people involved in that, and we put forward the paper and we said, right, this is what needs to be done. And the relevant dominant telephone company said, it can't be done. Yes, it could. It was actually very easy to do. And they said, it's technically impossible. No, it's actually quite possible. It's trivially easy to do. And so we did that in Australia. Started moving that process forward. You know, very small little policy innovation, which quite frankly I thought, yeah, done, it's nice, move on. It was 6 months later that I was at a conference on telecommunications in Buenos Aires. And there was an interesting session on mobile phones and competition, so I'll go to that. And there was the head of the UK telecommunications regulator, Ofcom, talking there. And his entire talk was about this innovation that had occurred in Australia. And he was referring to these academics. Oh, I know, that's us. We hadn't realised it, but in solving that problem, we'd actually solved a problem that every other country in the world had. We didn't realise it, we were just solving a local problem. and we'd actually leapfrog the rest of the world. Hey, 2 great research papers coming out of that, but more importantly, we actually had policy impact on the entire world. And so, whoa, for what started off as a very little project in a very little country, a long way from a lot of other countries, we could have that impact. So the first question, where does policy innovation fit in the university? The answer is easy. Policy innovation is a central driver in a university. It should be an input to your teaching. It should be both an input and an output for your research. And it's critical to the engagement role of a university, its broader social role. Second question, how do universities and academics get business and government to listen? Hey, we've got great ideas, but how do you get anyone to listen to them? Well, the answer is you don't, at least not initially. The first step in policy innovation is to listen. Because you have to listen to understand what the problem is, or the problems are, in order to work out how to solve them and where the roadblocks to the solution will be. So for example, I mentioned that at the Productivity Commission, we're doing an inquiry into financial services. Now I can guarantee that certainly I'm not, and none of my fellow commissioners involved in that inquiry, we're not financial experts. I'm not a professor of finance, I was a professor of economics. I avoided finance like the plague. But what did we do to start our inquiry? We said, okay, we'd better go and talk to the people who know what they're doing. Academics, the banks themselves, other people in the finance industry, the regulators, the Australian Reserve Bank. We spent the first couple of months chatting, talking, getting feedback. Oh, hang on, that view and that view, they don't make sense together. Let's interrogate further. Pushing, being annoying. I'm usually good at that. It was only when we could finish listening that we could start understanding the problems and coming up with solutions. We're designing, in fact, we've got our draft report out and our final report will be to the government in the middle of the year, but we'll have a range of recommendations in that to solve some of the problems we've seen in the banking and finance industry in Australia. Now, just because you've talked to people and listened to them, don't expect them necessarily to like your answers. So I expect that when we come out with our recommendations, there will be a lot of people out there saying, oh yeah, pointy heads. Those people don't have the real world knowledge. They're isolated in Productivity Commission. Oh, we've got academics from universities. But in general, the process may not lead to agreement, but it does lead to respect. Because if you've listened and you've engaged, the parties that you're making recommendations for and about will have to respect that you know what you're talking about. So how do academics get business and government to listen? By first listening themselves. Third question. How can university policy research have impact? Public policy is a long, long game. In business, finance, economics, in management. Don't expect easy wins. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. But it is critical to the growth and prosperity of Australia and of Sri Lanka. And you need to ask yourself, what is success in policy innovation? Now, I've just finished, or had released, so officially finished, a report on the pharmacy industry, as in the chemists, the companies or the people that you buy medicines off. You pass over the government script or the script from your doctor and get the medicines you need. The pharmacy industry, so not the drug producers, but the retail side of that. I was asked to do that along with 2 other expert people by the Department of Health. For various reasons, including a change of minister, the enthusiasm for this review changed somewhat over the process of the review itself. And we gave the government our report in the end of September last year, and finally last Thursday the government's response came out. And we had 45 recommendations in that report. And the government accepted 4. And immediately I get contacted by the press. You must be so disappointed. The government's only accepted 4 out of your 45 recommendations. I'm sorry, maybe I'm the ultimate glass half full guy. But my reaction is no. No, sorry, excuse me. They've accepted 4 really, really important recommendations. And sure, there's another 41 and I'd love them to accept those as well. But this is 4 victories that we have. The 4 areas that they're accepting the recommendations in are key. For example, in Australia at the moment, if you're admitted to hospital, you go into a hospital and you see the relevant medical staff and they say, "What drugs are you taking?" There is no electronic universal medicine record in Australia. Nobody knows what medicines you're on, even though they're prescribed and paid for by the government. In Australia at the moment, if you need medicines, you get a bit of paper from your doctor. You effectively can't order over the internet because the person supplying with the medicines only gets paid by the government if they get the bit of paper. Unfortunately, last time I tried pushing it into my computer, it didn't work. So we're moving to electronic scripts in Australia. The second recommendation accepted. Indigenous Australians, who are clearly the worst off group in Australia, I think that's undisputed. They have 2 different medicine schemes that apply to Indigenous Australians, except the schemes don't talk to each other. So an Indigenous Australian can have a script for medicines written in one place, go along to a pharmacy, and the pharmacist has to say, "I can't give you that medicine because it was a script written in the wrong environment, in the wrong place." Our third recommendation was, how about the processes follow the person, not where the script happened to be written. And the fourth one was relating to affordable medicines in a pharmacy. At the moment, if you have very high cost medicines that you need, many pharmacists won't be able to stock them because under the current rules they have to pay up front, sometimes $22,000 for the medicine. You may only be paying $36 or even $6. But the pharmacist has to pay $22,000 and then get the money back at some stage into the future from the government. And by the way, if they order it and you don't turn up and collect the medicine, they just wear the $22,000. So a lot of pharmacists refuse to stock those medicines. The fourth recommendation is to change that and help the pharmacists to be able to afford those medicines. 4 recommendations, which will fundamentally change medicine delivery in Australia. Hey, there were another 41 that would do a great job as well. But I'm pretty happy that we've got 4 of them. So how can university research have an impact? It's usually slowly. It's usually by the weighted evidence. And it's because it often has impact when government, business, and the broader community realise that there's a problem and an answer needs to be found. And the university academics are the ones best placed to provide that answer. But 4 wins are 4 wins. And we should take the impact that we have where we can get it. Final question. Who in universities has a role in policy innovation? Now, in some ways, I'm talking to the converted in this audience. If you didn't think engagement, interaction with the broader community was important, you wouldn't be here. But universities are eclectic institutions. We have researchers who are quite happy working on their research, which looks terribly esoteric, and I have no idea how it will ever apply to the real world. Except it's amazing how often a problem will come up and you'll say, actually, that stuff I thought was esoteric, it works to answer this particular problem. And often the person doing the research doesn't realise that they weren't thinking of that problem, they were solving some other problem. But esoteric research has a role in feeding into policy innovation. What about teaching? What if you're a teaching-focused academic? What's policy innovation got to do with you? Well, if you're not teaching based on the real world, I'm not sure what you're teaching in a business school particularly. Policy innovation feeds in to the curriculum, it feeds into the classroom, it inspires the students, and it leads the students to be interested in being the next generation of policy makers and leaders in business and government. So it's critical teaching. And obviously it's a key part of engagement. So, who in universities has a role in policy innovation? Well, the answer is everyone. But it does need to have leadership within the university. We're extraordinarily fortunate here at Monash to have people like Ramani and the Department of Management who have shown over almost a decade now the sort of leadership that's needed for policy innovation. I hope that many of you here will be the university leaders in Sri Lanka and in Australia in policy innovation in the future. Because I think we're going to need it more than ever going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for those inspiring words, Stephen. As an academic, I often wondered, how does the research we do really make an impact on people's lives? And obviously it does, and sometimes you're not even aware of the fact that it's actually changing people's lives. So it's good to know. And thank you for the reminder, because often I tend to have a pessimistic view about these things. So. We've got a bit of time for questions and answers. So Stephen's kind enough to answer any questions you may have. There's a couple of roaming microphones as well. So if you've got a question, if you put your hand up, then either Rangika or Chaturi will get the microphone to you.
Thank you, Professor Stephen, for your wonderful speech. It was truly a thought-provoking speech. I have a clarification with regards to your third question. We understand that it's very important for us to initially listen to them so that they will be listening to us as a result. Would you have any suggestions in terms of how we even get them to talk to us?
Yeah, so in many ways, people in government and people in business will be busy. And they'll be very busy and they'll say, oh, we don't really want to talk to that person in academia coming out of a university background. Until they've got a problem. And then when they've got a problem, they need the solution. So there's numerous ways you can actually get out there and get that dialogue started. In some ways, it's having a broader public involvement. Writing pieces for the local newspaper, writing blog pieces, having the university itself support putting out a newsletter to alumni that focus on the sort of work that is being done in policy innovation by the university. So the university itself and the individual academics have a role in that promotion side. The second is that often as academics, we see the problems coming down the path a lot earlier than people in business and government. And sometimes we need to push a little bit and get in front of them and say, look, this is going to be an issue. And that can be done on one-on-one meetings, or it can be done in workshops, or it can be done through personal connections and networking. There's all sorts of ways to get there and get that initial conversation started. Once you've got that conversation started, once the reputation issue is there, where business and government say, hey, we can trust that person. They come up with really sensible answers. They're not a pointy head at all. All the rest of the university probably, but they're really, once you get to that point, once it's, gee, the business school at Monash University, that's practical. Yeah, it's not like those other ones. We can talk to those people. Once the institution gets to that point, that's when the conversation starts. That's when you can listen. And that's when they will listen to you.
Any other questions? this anyone from the audience can ask a question. Okay, I'll ask a question. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Because I was thinking that many questions come from. Thank you very much for your inspiring message. But if you look at the reality, and particularly these good universities, they are pushed towards A-star publications rather than looking at their research impact on society. So I think you are the best person to ask this question in terms of like I remember you enjoyed when you were in academia. I believe you enjoy when you are in government. So when I look at the partnership between this academia and government, so do you think in the real world academics do have enough time to look at this partnership between research and government? As we all understand, there are significant implications for society. Because of this push towards A-star publications in academia, it gives us very little time for all academics to look at other aspects of our work. And also, with my own experience, when you look at your publications, and in terms of readership, because my background is a developing country background, they do not have opportunity to read these A-star journals because they do not have access to them. So therefore, even if you look at citations, the citations mainly come from other publications rather than A-star, the top level journals. What is your comment on that? Thanks.
Okay, so let me start with the second part first. There's numerous ways to communicate findings. So academic journals is one of them. In my own discipline of economics, and I recognise it differs between different disciplines, the academic journals are historic records of papers. Nobody goes to the academic journals and says, I want to read the most recent research, because basically it takes about 5 years, possibly longer, to get even the best papers into the academic journals. So the internet and various sites like the Social Sciences Research Network have replaced the academic journals as a means of communication. Be useful to tell the universities this. It's important to communicate research findings in policy, practical findings, down to at various levels. And it may be a journal publication, a submission to a government inquiry, an op-ed piece in a local newspaper. They all have value. Now, as Ramani knows, in Australia we've possibly kicked too far down one side, particularly in recent years. And I think we're actually out of line internationally. If you look at the top universities in the world, they don't have the academics sitting there saying, well, gosh, Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary, he doesn't go to his office and say, oh, I better write the next A-star journal publication. Of course not. Joe Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner in economics, he doesn't write A-star publications. They are communicating in different ways. They are engaging in different ways. So I think Australian universities in particular need to understand, and I think the pressure on them from the government is to make sure they understand that research is one of, but only one of, the outputs of the university. And research is more than just a nice A-star journal publication. I don't think we're there yet in Australia, but we're on the path there. So Sri Lanka is obviously at a different stage of a journey. The best universities in the world are balanced. It's not a surprise. I'll pick on my alma mater because I pay an eye on it, but if you look at Harvard, what do they have? They have a bunch of people from the Council of Economic Advisors, the person who's running the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard at the moment, and a former classmate of mine. He's got no A-star publications. He was working in the Federal Reserve Banks and on the Federal Board of Governors. And they brought him back. They didn't bring him back because they expect A-star publications. They brought him back because of his ability to develop policy, and that's a policy school. So I think Australia, if you're from Sri Lanka, Australia doesn't have all the answers. And I think we've got some work to do on our own university system to make sure we get the balance back.
Okay, maybe one final question, Professor Priyan Medis.
Thank you. I think, sorry, I missed most of the speech, but last part I heard. But I have heard you speaking in other forums. So thank you very much for all the good work you're doing.
Once you've heard me, once.
But I just want to mention being part of the Australian Research Council as well, in some the College of Experts. The things are changing a bit now because exactly for the first time in Australia, in the Excellence in Research in Australia, ERA, which is our main aim. Every department is trying to get ratings 3, 4, 5s. That depends on the funding, that depends on everything, reputation. For the first time, they have introduced impact statements. So for the next round, there will be research impact statements. And one of the case studies can be, which I'm from Melbourne University, but we are doing it. This is a case study. This is the kind of impact they're looking at, doing these training programs, courses, because linking learning from the research to really some delivery as well. So this will fit into that. And so it didn't happen before in the RA. For the first time, they're doing it. So things are changing already. So just wanted to add to that, your comments.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Measurement sometimes comes down to very simple numbers. How many A-star journal publications? Well, what's an A-star journal? Well, we better come up with a list. The Excellence in Research in Australia went down that path and very quickly realised it was not a great path to go down and said, oops, no, forget about that list. The cat had got out of the bag, and I suspect Monash University, as well as many other universities, still use the list to evaluate staff members. We've got to be smarter at evaluating university academics, and it's good to hear that the ARC is moving in that direction. I think we'll continue to see that movement in Australia because, quite frankly, Australia needs it.
Okay, in the interest of time, we might conclude the questions. If you have, obviously, further questions, Stephen will be around when we have refreshments, and you can approach him and obviously ask those queries. Please thank Professor Stephen. I know there's been a lot of speeches. This is the last one, and she always tells me it's the worst speech to do because everyone's waiting for the food, and she's the one standing between the food and people's refreshment. So, as has already been mentioned multiple times, the live wire, the heartbeat of these programs is Associate Professor Ramani Samaratunga. It was her vision that got these programs off the ground. I only joined 3 years after the program started. I've learned a lot from her, and she's got a few words to say to thank those who are behind the scenes. Often they are not seen, but without them these programs cannot function. So please welcome Associate Professor Ramani Samaratunga.
Let me first congratulate the fellows who have been selected for 2018 program. I wish you a very pleasant stay here. And I think I must thank the keynote speaker, Professor Stephen King, and I think that is where we try to fill in the gap with this program. And if you look at our AAF program since 2010, now in its 9th year, the AAF program has continued to have an enormous impact across a range of significant issues for Sri Lanka and to generate a similarly great range of achievements during this period. This year, the focus is, as mentioned earlier, university-industry linkages for business development through innovation and knowledge creation in Sri Lanka. It is clear to all of us that universities must take the lead in creating knowledge for business enterprises, not just for government, it's for business enterprises as well. But they must also go further. As Stephen said very correctly, they must ensure that they communicate and share their knowledge as widely as possible. And one aspect of that sharing, of course, is between academics themselves, even it is not happening to the highest level. This program provides a valuable opportunity for us to learn from each other, especially in our experiences in creating linkages with industry. This is again a very special occasion for two reasons. Number one, as Gavin said, this is the very first program we designed exclusively for academics. More importantly, these academics are from my home university, which I love so much, University of Sri Jawatanapura, and abbreviation USJP. And second, when we recall our humble beginnings in 2010 and identify how we survived until now, we should express our sincere thanks to Professor Stephen King, whose support was invaluable in those formative years when he was also new as dean. If I reveal a little bit more, I still remember in 2009, when I got my application, luckily we got new Vice Chancellor, new Dean and new Head of Department. So I went to my Head of Department, Professor Ian McLaughlin, and I asked, would you please forward this application to the Dean for his approval. He said, his own words, Ramani, I don't think there's no point, because he's not in favor of what we call executive training programs. Then I said, if we don't ask, how do we know? Because this is not an executive training program. This is something unique partnership between Sri Lanka and Monash University. However, Ian, in the end, agreed to get the application to the Dean. I still got this email in my computer, I didn't delete it, Stephen. He said, Ramani, you can go ahead because the Dean gave the green light. That is how we started. Therefore, thank you so much for your decision. It went long away, last 8-9 years, and we already trained 180 altogether within these 8 years. And we are very proud of our achievements. The last 12 months have been particularly fruitful for us, as it was the first time in the program's history we received 2 grants, which allowed us to offer this second program today. We also introduced, as Michaela said, a study tour between Monash University and the University of Sri Jawatanapura in February 2018 for 2 weeks. 36 Monash students, postgraduate and undergraduate, went to Sri Lanka, and the quality of study tour certainly exceeded our expectations. That was very well organized, and the credit goes to the student and staff of SJP and our past fellows of this program. They were very keen to help wherever the gaps. So they combined with these 2 sources, the study tour was very successful. Even at one time, one of the students came to me and asked, Ramani, why do they offer food so much? Do they try to promote this study tour by doing that? They could not understand that's a tradition in Sri Lanka. Hospitality is top priority in Sri Lanka. So what contributed to the success of these FF programs to get us to where we are today? In my view, there are 3 factors and equal in value. The number one is the quality of resource persons. We get our resource persons from academia, the top academics available in this country, like of course Professor Priyan Mendis from Monash University, Professor Pemchand Ratukorala from ANU, and our own academics, Professor Sherry Su and Professor Felix Mavendo, to name a few of them. Then we select people from the government of Australia. Of course, Professor Stephen King, you are included, and also the Small Business Commissioner in Sydney, also politicians like Honourable John Brumby, the former Premier of Victoria. And also we get a few people from our own Sri Lankan diaspora, and they are very keen to help us. Whenever we go to them, to invite them as resource persons, they never said no. And to name at least a couple, Mr. Mohan Perra and also Mrs. Padmini Gunasekar. They are very successful business people in our community and very well respected. So that is number one reason why we are successful. The second reason is the leadership and partnership from DFAT, Sri Lanka Institute of Development Administration, that's LIDA, and USJP and Monash University. I think these organizations have played a unique part. The confidence these organizations showed in trusting us has meant everything to us. We should especially note the continuing financial support of DFAT at a time when there must be so many demands for Australia's aid programs and government commitments. I must also again thank our very close partner, USJP, for the initial input to the grant application and for selecting participants, a process that is sensitive and complex. And it was not easy for the Vice Chancellor to select 15 young academics for this program out of 100 or 300 junior academics. Therefore, we especially thank the Vice Chancellor, Professor Sampath Amaratunga, Dean of the Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce, Dr. Anprakumara, and the local coordinator, Dr. Vasantha Perra, for again stepping up to assist and support. On both sides of the partnership, this calls for great efforts in matching leadership style and accommodating each other's ideas and priorities. This we both do with great success. Without the support of Monash senior management, this program would not have become a reality. I must thank the interim dean, Professor Rob Brooks, Deputy Dean International, Professor Michaela Rankin, and our Head of Department Management, Professor Veronica Ambrosini, for their wonderful support. I would also like to acknowledge the significant contribution made by Professor Abid Khan, Deputy Vice Chancellor, and we should remember with sadness the support that the late Professor Com Kearney gave us as head of Monash Business School. He is very much missed. I would also like to thank the audience of your time and your presence here. In the audience, I can see many Sri Lankans who are prominent members in the community, such as Dr. Sarath Lal Lukwata, the President of Japra Alumni Association, and also Vice President, Associate Professor Premyapa, and Mrs. Vinita Jayasinghe, former Secretary, Minister of Women's Affairs of Sri Lanka, and also a well-known practitioner, Dr. Jayasekara, again too many to name them all. It is very much appreciated that busy people make the time to come to these occasions and demonstrate their support. The expression of that support sent important messages to the whole community about these programs and what they can and do offer. Therefore, this is in no way an individual effort, even though you mentioned my name a few times. Rather, this is a team effort of very many people indeed. Before I go further, we will now present a few awards to recognize the contribution of different people. First, I would like to call upon Professor Michaela Rankin on behalf of Monash Business School to present the first award to our keynote speaker, Professor Stephen King, for accepting our invitation and delivering very inspiring keynote speech to boost our morale. Second, I would like to acknowledge the Sri Lankan Consul General in Melbourne, Mr. Prasanna Gamge, for his wonderful support. Thank you, Prasanna. You are right behind us whenever we need help, including getting visa this time round. The next, I would like to invite Dr. Dushan Jayavikrama to get receive the award on behalf of the Vice Chancellor of Sri Jawadanpur University. Thank you, Dushan. May I please call upon Mrs. Prasanna Gamage and Vasanta Gamage to come forward, and we really appreciate your support to our Consul General. I know that behind the scene you have been doing a marvelous job for the community here in Australia. Thank you, Mikaela. Thank you very much. The process should be always reciprocal. Therefore, USJB would also like to present a token of appreciation to Monash University for its continuing support. Can I please ask Dr. Dushan Jayavikrama to come forward to distribute these awards? So, USJB appreciates the strong support they get from the Monash Business School. First, I would like to invite Professor Michaela Rankin, Deputy Dean International, to accept this award on behalf of Monash Business School. Next, Professor Gavin Jack, Acting Head Department of Management, to represent the Head of Department, Professor Veronica Ambrosini. And the department provides us with excellent support and recognizes our program as its flagship program. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay. So the USJP wants to recognize our Consul General's work here. I totally agree with them, and would you please come forward again? Thank you, Dushan. Next, we would like to thank our professional staff. Our department's professional staff and the faculty events team ensure that these programs not only run, but run smoothly. Their work is part of that large range of hidden tasks and logistics. Without their support, these programs simply do not get off the ground. We are very fortunate to have their support and hard work, Larissa. Thank you very much. A very special thank you note goes to my core team. First, my right-hand person, Dr. Lakma Labesekara and Dr. Nilupama Vijayawardhan. Yes, we had many meetings, many debates, many arguments, and most of the time they won, not me. And thank you for your invaluable contribution over the years. And also, I take this opportunity to congratulate Nilupama, who got a new job, full-time job at RMIT. Well done, Nilupama. Then I would like to thank Rangika Palliarachi, a lawyer by profession, and thank you for looking after everything from A to Z. And we are very keen to do everything we are asked to do by Rangika, because she always bring in legal issues otherwise. So far we did well. And also Karen Su, Chanaka Vijayawardhana and Chatrusi Devi are also mentioned here with appreciation. We make a great team. Without them, I do not think I would be able to do all these things. It's not an individual, it's always great teamwork. Last but not least, I would like to thank everyone who helped in numerous ways to make this event a reality. I cannot thank you all individually, but I would like to let you know that all of you are dearly remembered and all the support is very much appreciated. I know that now you are very tired and waiting for some food, so please join us for refreshments before you leave. Thank you once again. I really appreciate the community support. because I always see the engagement between what we do at Monash University and how we can communicate it to the wider society. I think this engagement is the key. I always enjoy having you at these events, and so far last 8 years you did come, even though you are busy people. I must mention that until last year it was Monday morning, our opening ceremony, but all of you attended right from the beginning in 2010 until 2019, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the official proceedings of this opening ceremony. You're all welcome to join us in some refreshments outside this hall. Thank you.